Welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of fintech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Paul Krogdahl and Ville Sontu. This is Fintech Daydreaming.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Fintech Daydreaming, and more specifically the Nordic Fintech Highlights, which we do once a month in collaboration with Fintech Farm Helsinki. So today we're going to be talking about the Nordic Fintech news. My name is Ville Sontu. I will be your host for this episode today and our conversation about all the fintech news happening here in the Nordics. But as usual, I'm always joined by my dear co-host and friend, Paul Krogdahl. So Paul, how's it going for you today?
It's going wonderfully good for me today, like it always is. I mean, I really enjoy these moments that we have together where we get to discuss about fintech, banking, and technology in general, right?
Yeah, exactly. I have to say that we've done a few of these episodes now with Fintech Farm, and it's fun. We get to talk, we get to kind of have a casual, fun conversation around our favorite topic on fintech. And of course, as we live in the Nordics, we're more than happy to reflect on the news that we have here in the Nordic fintech scene specifically. But with that being said,
and maybe we should highlight and apologize for the fact that we're not in our cool little studio this time. I mean, we're here with Janne, but we didn't manage to get to the studio. We're having to do it remote.
Yes, exactly. The year end kind of schedule is a little bit demanding for some of us, and specifically for me, I need to head to the airport right after this recording, and I literally just landed like 24 hours ago to back to Helsinki. So yeah, the schedule is quite crazy. We had to do it this way remotely this time, but in the future we will of course try to be in the same room as usual. I think that format is also fun, and it's always good to be in the same space. Talking about being in the same space, Janne. So welcome again to our conversation about the Nordic Fintech Highlights. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm good. Getting back to normal routines after the very busy Slush week.
Oh yes. So the Slush conference happened last week here in Helsinki. And for those of you who might not know from our global audience, so Janne, can you just briefly describe what Slush is?
Yes, so Slush is the leading European startup conference, probably even global. So it's been happening in Finland for 10-15 years. Idea to bring together entrepreneurs and investors. Primarily, it's been growing. I think this year there was already closer to 20,000 people again. So it of course attracts a lot of corporates to the same venue to see what the future looks like, what kind of tech companies we have in the market. Corporate venture capital, of course, one big trend, big companies looking, also banks towards new innovations. So yeah, tech, future, leadership, growth, great event. And besides all the great content, it's also like a festival kind of happening. So it's also really nice experience and definitely a thing to see if you're not familiar with Finland and Nordics.
Yeah, I mean, to put that into context a little bit. So this year, unfortunately, I did not have the chance to participate in Slush due to my travels and other obligations that I have. But I've been there many years in previous roles, especially, and I can tell the entire Helsinki central downtown Helsinki becomes like Slush world. So it's just these side events. The atmosphere in Helsinki is completely different during that week. There's always happening something happening somewhere during that week, not only in the conference, which is in the convention center, but it's also these side events. I believe, Janne, you even hosted one of the side events.
Yeah, indeed. We have our annual Helsinki Fintech Pool, or this year it was Loop, but the idea is that because there's so many people from the industry coming to these big events, so we want to bring them all into the same place for matchmaking for once. So I think we had nearly 200 fintech CEOs or entrepreneurs in our evening parties. So definitely great way to meet with like-minded people.
And
I have to admit, I have a love-hate relationship with Slush. Just like you, Villa, unfortunately, this year I wasn't able to make it due to transitioning of jobs. But you know, Slush as a conference and meeting people is very, very good. The reason why I don't like Slush sometimes is the nightclub approach that they put to the actual Slush event. It's too dark. There's too many flashing lights. It's too noisy. You get tired very quickly when you're at Slush.
It is an intense experience. I can certainly attest to that. I do feel when I've been there after that 1 week of Slush, I think you need like 4 weeks of vacation to recover from it because you don't really sleep. You go to these events and yeah, it's crazy. But that being said, let's move on. I think the Slush theme will pick up in our conversation today about the different news articles that we're going to talk about a little bit as well. But before we get to all that, we do have to do the usual thing for our audience, and that's of course the joke that we do. And being a Nordic Fintech Highlight episode, we usually outsource this responsibility to Janne. So Janne, do you have a joke for us this week?
Yeah, I do have once again. So why was the credit card so damn stressed?
Something to do with the credit line, I guess, but you tell us.
Yeah, it had difficulties to maintain its balance.
That's I'm pretty certain we've heard some version of that joke before, but again.
Yeah, I think so. It's a low-hanging fruit, I can admit.
Well, you know, it's good to repeat the good ones. So repetition is not always bad.
No. Exactly. And it's about the kind of getting to the right atmosphere of starting with a bad joke, and so I think that really achieved that in a good way. But okay, great. Let's get a move on and start talking about the Nordic fintech news. So as usual, we will go around the table. We will start with Janne, then Paul and myself, and then we will have a conversation around individual news items, and then wrap it up. But let's start with you, Janne. Maybe you can give a bit of an overview of last month or this month and how everything went from an overall perspective. And then perhaps if you want to pick one or two news stories that you want to talk about specifically, we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, another pretty vibrant month. I wouldn't say there was anything that groundbreaking, but quite the usual stuff. No huge funding rounds, but we can see a few millions going here and there in different areas of fintech. Also bigger companies visible. A little bit of news on the banking side as well, what we'll probably also be covering today. But in general, I think it's safe to say that the Nordic fintech is alive and well. Also, we'll talk a bit about Baltics today, and also at the highlight of the month we had Slush ending last week. MasterCard had their program where they had companies from Sweden, Finland, and the Baltics. It was a Lithuanian company called Fidium. They do blockchain integration, so they won the Lighthouse autumn batch this year, and then at the same time the former MasterCard Lighthouse winner Enfuce from Finland. So they announced that they closed an €8 million funding round, and actually Visa was part of that. So that's
wow,
of course kind of interesting news. So they had some additional funding. It's basically an extended C round, so not a huge round, but a little bit of more war chest towards the future scaling the business and growing towards becoming becoming a unicorn. But yeah, I think the interesting thing is here that Enfuce is issuing both for Visa and MasterCard. Now they got Visa on board, and of course we know from similar companies like Marketa, so they will also have these big credit card network companies in as investors. So yeah, good news definitely. And I don't know, what's your take on this news?
So Paul, any comments?
I think we're seeing a fundamental explosion in payments and cards business globally, and it's been driven by the continuation of embedded finance and open banking. So I'm not surprised that the large players like Visa and MasterCard are putting investments into some of these fintechs. I think part of it is also a protection approach, right? If you get in there, you put the money in, and you get partnered with some of these guys, it prevents you from being taken out of the loop, I suppose you could say. And I think we're going to continue seeing an awful lot of wrangling in this space, and potentially also some mergers and acquisitions going forwards.
Absolutely. From my perspective, first of all, Enfuce, fantastic success story from Finland so far. So all the best to Enfuce. I have a lot of friends working there as well. Again, fantastic to see them continue on their path of growth and finding new investors into the mix. Now, as far as the Visa MasterCard combination goes, I think if we've been observing these two giant networks and their strategy moving forward, is that they do recognize that the existing card rails might not be there forever, especially the rise of account-to-account and open banking and instant payments schemes on a local level has created not an existential threat, but at least a new way to move money beyond the card rails. And the answer seems to be from Visa, MasterCard to be investing into these account-to-account rails as well. So instead of trying to force everybody to go to the classic card rails, they are now making big bets on the account-to-account space and open banking as well. Again, these two American giant companies are controlling a massive portion of the retail payments in Europe, and this links to a discussion we've had previously in the news episodes as well, which is the fact that the European regulators are waking up to this reality of Visa MasterCard having such almost like a monopoly on the retail payments. So it in an interesting way, this connects to the supervision and regulation as well in terms of how they invest into different companies. So so that was the Enfuce part. Anything else you wanted to mention from the infamous Slush week?
Well, typical stuff. Long nights, karaoke, lot of networking. Regarding the actual main program at Slush, so there were quite a few people from the fintech side as main speakers. We have we saw the CEO of Monzo at the end, some big names from Stripe, the original founder of Wise, and so on. So of course, big names. They weren't necessarily talking about fintech in specific, bit more about generally scaling up business, especially in Europe. But of course, fintech is playing a big role in total in the field of emerging tech. And then something else what we also did very recently is that we also launched the report of the biggest fintech companies in Finland based on their financials, which we gathered from last year. So few insights or conclusion from that side if you like to hear.
Yeah, please give us the highlights.
So in general, we can start to see that if you look at startups, talking about companies less than 5 years old, So that sector has actually been coming a bit down because there's simply less new companies coming to the market. We still see in the very early stage companies a few very big and successful firms. Result Elf, for instance, Equilibrium, Nord Crypto, Sorter, so on. But then the volume in early stage companies in total, there are not so many big or companies in total in that side. Then if we look at bit bigger companies, scale up side, we see some great international growth. I mentioned already Enfuce there, and many other companies, especially on the financial software side. And then actually the great news is that the total size of the fintech business in Finland is growing massively. I think from some 1.2 billion to 1.7 billion in revenue in total. Is that because these big companies are just growing massively, particularly Epassi, which is the biggest fintech company in Finland, but then also more traditional companies like Multitude, Basware, and Samlink as well. So
well, that gives me a fantastic opportunity there. I mean, I need to interrupt you there for a minute.
Yeah.
No, I mean, fantastic report, and personally I'm quite excited that Samlink came fourth in your report. As everybody knows, I moved on from IBM after 26 years at IBM, and I've stepped into Samlink as part of Samlink's advisory services practice, which is a small consultancy inside of Samlink focused on advising both banks and fintechs, both from a business perspective, but also a technology perspective. So a little shout out there, and thank you, and nice to see Samlink ranking so high in that report from a Finnish business perspective.
Yeah, definitely, and also to all the listeners, so you can get the report from our website. So it's always interesting to have a bit of a look on how the overall picture looks like and what kind of companies are growing the most. Because we could say that it's not always sunshine in all the industries. We could clearly see that few of the crypto companies, for instance, disappeared from the list. Local Bitcoins intentionally is withdrawing from the market, and also a lot of the consumer lending companies who were doing quite well a few years ago. So they have also been basically shutting down pretty much all their functions, mainly due to some regulatory changes, which doesn't really it's not anymore really feasible to be a lending company if you are not a bank. So that has been a big shift. But yeah, that's about the report.
So thanks, Janne, and beautiful segue, not planned at all, to the Samlink news from Paul's perspective. So let's come back to this in 1 year. So when you do the 2024 report, we will see if Samlink is number 4, number 3, or something less. And either way, we can either credit or blame Paul for that change.
That's a good idea. Yeah,
it's going to be number 1, absolutely. Samlink has, we're going to grow.
Fantastic. Looking forward to hearing the fantastic growth story of Samlink. Samlink certainly has been around for a long time, and it's interesting to see how it's reinventing itself a little bit with this, for instance, with these advisory services. But good, we will definitely keep on following the Samlink story, whether we like it or not, because we have Paul. So. But beyond that, let's move on with the show. The second news from the FinTech newsletter was selected by Paul. So Paul, what's your story this week?
Yeah, so looking at the news that happened during November, the one that caught my eye was actually between the Finnish savings bank and Tink. And I think, great opportunity for Tink there, and also for Savings Bank. But what really caught my eye about this wasn't so much about the partnership, but it was about Savings Bank taking a focused position on not only the financial wellness of their customers, but also understanding the impact of this increasing cost of living that we're all facing globally, but particularly in Finland. And their head of private banking stepping up saying, we as a bank need to be more focused on the economical climate, how we can help our customers, how we can advise our customers better, and how we can help them in this financial crisis. And I think we need to see more banks taking this sort of a step, understanding that they're not just there to hold money, but also to guide their customers, to help their banking clients in weathering what's going on at the moment. And in doing so, actually builds a large amount of trust. And on the back of that trust, you get happy customers, and they'll recommend you to other people. And it's a good way of growing your bank. So from my perspective, fantastically well done by Savings Bank.
So let me, for the audience benefit here as well, who might not know what Tink actually does. So what actually is it that they launched? Is a personal finance management tool, or what is it?
So Tink is predominantly sitting in that space of customer engagement. And yes, they are predominantly in the PFM space. But PFM, if we look at traditional PFM, is to a certain degree dying off, because PFM is very much focused on telling you what has happened, whereas most customers in banking actually want to understand what's going to happen. So we're seeing a lot of fintechs and technology companies trying to step into this space. Some of them are taking great advantage of generative AI or AI capabilities. Others are focusing more towards the aggregation space of looking across banking capabilities. Tink is sitting somewhere in the middle of all of that. So they're doing quite well. They've got some good data-driven offerings. And I'm hoping to see Tink move more towards that sort of AI future capability of helping clients. I think Personetics is another one that's in that space. But, again, Tink being a Nordic company, I think it's great to see, right?
Yeah. Personally, I mean, I'm always been a little bit of skeptic for the PFM solutions, because I'm yet to see a PFM solution that would actually do anything for me. All of them, they draw like nice graphs of my spending, and they tell me of all the nice categories that I've been spending on, so groceries, supermarket, restaurants, entertainment, whatever. But my thing is that I look at that once and I'm like, so what?
And that's the whole issue with PFM. If you look traditionally back at PFM, first of all, the main issue of PFM was the fact that it was telling you what has happened predominantly. And you don't need to know what has happened. You need to know what's going to happen. You need the bank to help you and guide you in future uncertainty. Secondly, the problem with most PFM solutions is that they are very, very user-driven. In the fact that, you go into most banks these days, they're digital apps that are using some form of PFM. You have to spend half your lifetime categorizing your transactions. Mm-hmm. And the banks actually know most of this, right? They can collect a lot of this information. And if you're sitting there as a consumer, spending half your life categorizing stuff to give you very little return on the investment you're putting in, investment of time here, not money, then the PFM solution actually there's no wow factor, except for, like you said, oh yeah, I can see a graph that shows how much I've spent on my shopping. Again, consumers don't really need that. It gives them a little bit. What they need is future view. What's going to happen? How can you guide me as a bank with your financial insights and the knowledge of me and my behavior to tell me what's going to happen in the future?
Exactly, and to a certain extent, we're starting to see this. So, for example, with Revolut, I think with Nordea as well, you're able to see that if you keep on spending like you do, at the end of the month, you will have spent this much money. So that kind of minor predictions, it's already there. The other element that I think will make PFM successful and interesting for customers is, of course, the recommendations. There's some element of that. So for instance, it says that, well, you have this amount of subscriptions, and then it's easy for you to shut those subscriptions down. kind of a PFM related feature, again, helping customers save money, to have more transparency on where the money actually is going, especially subscriptions with all the streaming services and music and media, whatnot, seem to be getting, it's easy to lose control of those costs. And I think these tools will help there as well. One thing
but
that
here is where we get into another problem with all of this. And I know we're going down into a rabbit hole for a minute, but this is one of the passions I have at the moment. If you actually look at the behavior of most people these days, they don't have one bank. So having a PFM solution, which is very focused on just one bank and the bank, actually doesn't give you a full picture of what's going on. I mean, take me, I've got 3 different bank relationships. And this is where you start getting into, you know, a good provider of solutions like this not only has to be fantastic in embedded finance and open banking, that they also need to be able to give that predictive holistic view, which means that, fine, look at everything that's happening in one of my accounts, but if you don't have that holistic view of what I'm doing with my money across my other portfolios, you can't actually give me a very good view on guiding me in my future financial capabilities and my financial wellness. So there is, you know, PSD3, open banking, embedded finance, the whole platformification that we've talked about in other episodes is becoming increasingly important. And I think, again, Savings Bank made a good step in the right direction, but it's this holistic plugging it all together, which is going to be critical, I think, going forwards.
Yeah. So Janne, are you a PFM fan?
Yeah, I've been, of course, using PFM, trying different tools for quite a while. I can agree pretty much on what you are saying. Sometimes it's nice to check where do you spend money. Rarely you get any really like wow effects. Nothing like that surprising from the figures. What I think could be cool, other trending area is savings and robo-advisory and gamification on that side. So putting these together, here are the things where you can save, and here are the things how you can invest, and here are the things you can eventually buy. So, you know, if you cut costs on this side, then you can, you know, get a car or a house or a horse in you know 5 years, whatever you prefer. But I think PFM has potential, but you have to really take it into a bit broader perspective, more data, more, you know, engagement, perhaps using AI, and then the saving and investment kind of motivation.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, because in my mind, the data aggregation element and then the predictive element of these PFM features is a way for banks to, for instance, create user stories around life events, because ultimately you should be able to go to your bank and say that, hey, I would like to buy this car. What does that mean for me in terms of financing? Yeah. What are the options for me? What would you recommend that I do? Should I buy it? Should I lease it? Should I rent it? And having this data insights actually would allow the bank to do that in a very simple way without asking too many questions. And even if you take it closer to what we do today, things like mortgages. If you apply for a house loan today, doesn't matter what customer of which bank you are, you will have to enter tons of information manually or into the form, and then it will crunch some numbers and give you a manual response in many cases, whether what kind of a mortgage you're able to get for the apartment or house that you wanted to buy. Automating this with data aggregation and giving recommendations and say that, you know, I would like to buy a house in this area for these specifications, and then it will just give you the options on how would that impact your daily finances, and then perhaps give a recommendation and even then give the chance to get the loan itself, of course. I think that this life event driven use cases would be an interesting way to see things moving forward. I think I saw a demo of this kind of thing in the Finovate conference maybe three years ago already, or it was before pandemic anyway, and still I haven't seen that done in a good way anywhere, but we'll see. The banks sometimes take their good time to get things done.
they do. But yeah, I've seen also a few quite impressive kind of gamification type of investment solutions. So would be also cool to see them in real action.
Indeed. Good. So moving on, since time is moving forward, so we should move forward to the next story as well, and that would be my turn in this case to introduce the topic. So the news headline that I picked from the newsletter today was the Bank of Lithuania, so the Central Bank of Lithuania, outlining their fintech strategy for the next 5 years. They basically want to do predictably the things that they have already been doing. So they want to make Lithuania the most attractive state in the European Union for fintechs to come in and grow and be licensed and working closely with the regulators in an environment that is collaborative rather than restrictive when it comes to supervision and regulation. They want to grow the ecosystem. They want to bring in people into Lithuania, create these centers of excellence, basically growing the fintech sector in Lithuania with fairly aggressive growth numbers that they were setting as KPIs for their 5-year strategy. And all of this is quite predictable. But the interesting bit from my perspective was that we've seen this, let's say, government-driven fintech growth strategies all around the world. We've seen many islands in the Bahamas and Caribbean be very open to crypto companies. We've seen Malta, for example, to be a very open place for, again, crypto companies and maybe some consumer lending providers to come in and be regulated as part of the European Union. That has come with its side effects as well, of course, but Lithuania wants to achieve that, and this is the interesting part, by being a very, not conservative, but very strict on actual supervision of these entities. And I think it was no coincidence leading up to this strategy announcement that they actually made several news headlines during the summer, so June, July, August, where they basically either fined or canceled licenses for companies or fintechs that did not comply with the AML requirements that they have in the European Union and Lithuania specifically. They want to make sure that people understand that this is no island paradise where there is no supervision, that this is actually real regulation with real enforcement. And if you do come here, you are welcome. And this is an open place, but you have to comply. I think this is an interesting move because many people are quite skeptical, especially when you're in the, let's say, in the Western part of the world. You might look at Lithuania as a place that wants to achieve this growth by any means necessary and being very lenient towards fintechs in terms of having a loose approach to supervision is certainly a doubt that you have. So Lithuania has now the strategy to be a more let's say, trusted provider of fintech companies in the future. So I like this approach. I like it a lot. Paul, what is your opinion on the Lithuanian fintech space?
Well, just on the back of what's happening with Binance and regulators and what we've seen with other crypto exchanges, I can understand what they're saying. We will regulate this properly. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because fintechs want to be agile, they want to be nimble, they want to be quick, they want to break things, they sometimes focus on growth and worry about the implications later. So from that perspective, they might find that they don't get as many fintechs jumping in as they maybe are hoping for. But at the same time, at least they'll get fintechs jumping in that understand the implications of regulations and how to play the game properly rather than maybe skirt a little bit on the outsides. So I, just like you, I agree. I think it's a good approach. It's a welcoming approach. And at the end of the day, the regulators are there for a good reason, right?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the very interesting test case for the setup that everybody can follow from the news is Revolut. So
Yeah.
Revolut being in the UK, and they've been trying to get a banking license there several times, failing each time, or at least it's still in process. I guess that they have not formally been rejected. They just kind of keep on going around trying to get the license. But Revolut does hold a full bank, well, not a full banking license, what they call a digital banking license in Lithuania. So I think the optics of that, so basically saying the UK wants to consider themselves as the gold standard as far as banking licenses go, and that might be true. They're quite stringent on the regulation there. So if you do get a banking license in the UK, that is your passport to get a banking license in the US as well and other parts of the world, because again, this is seen as a gold standard. Lithuania, having already given this license to Revolut, of course, now wants to make sure that they are not seen as some kind of a loose regulatory place where anybody can get a banking license. So they want to make sure that the reputation on this front is intact. Revolut, as far as I know, hasn't run into any significant problems with the Lithuanian supervisors so far. There was some turbulence in the beginning about the ownership structures relating to the Russian ownership of Revolut. Or at least connections from the founders. But beyond that, I think I haven't heard too many negative things from Lithuanian supervisors when it comes to Revolut. So again, an interesting kind of test case, an example of what are the differences between different jurisdictions and what is the value, quote unquote, of the Lithuanian license. But Janne, any views into the Lithuanian ecosystem?
Yeah, this is of course an interesting topic, and we briefly discussed it already in last episode, but I think this is perhaps a good approach. I know from what I've heard that there are fintech companies, for instance, who have their license in Malta, and they're thinking about getting the same license from some other EU country, because the license from Malta is not that reputable. If you have it from some stricter country like, for instance, Finland, so it would give more credibility. And when it comes to Lithuania, in like trying to be strict but still attracting a lot of companies, so of course it's two different sides on that. But I definitely think that you can do things well. You can be fast and understandable regulation, but still be quite compliant and sharp. So without a doubt, there's a lot of room to for every regulator to improve without being excessively loose. So it's good if they have a big plan on a national level to improve that side, and hopefully other countries could also then learn from that.
Exactly, and we will see how this will move forward, and we will continue to follow, of course, how the 5-year strategy is being executed by the Lithuanian central bank. One thing that did occur to me, and to kind of wrap up this discussion, is that one element of being licensed, of course, is the fact that you do have to have a local team. So you have to have senior executive leadership present in the country where you are licensed. So in this case, in Lithuania. And this kind of raises the question then, does Lithuania have all these fintech experts living in Lithuania or willing to move to Lithuania to facilitate for this licensing scheme that they want to exponentially grow now? And in the long run, this will become a question of how are the universities of Lithuania prepared for this, and making sure that there's enough financial services and technology professionals to kind of facilitate for this growth. But how to also make Lithuania an attractive place for people to move in and work in. I think that's an also interesting parameter to observe now as they seek this growth.
Perhaps a University of AML.
Yes, the University of AML CTF KYC. I would definitely go there myself.
Yeah.
Good. So that brings us to the end of our news round. Any final reflections from you, Paul, before we call it a day?
None from me. Another Slush event over and done with. Pretty sad that I didn't make it this year, but it's on my calendar for next year. And nothing extra from me.
Yeah, good. Jan, from you?
No, I think that was a pretty nice wrap up, and good to start moving towards the end of the year this year from here.
And on that note, this actually was the last Nordic Fintech Highlights episode for this year. We will definitely continue this trend moving forward as well. But for this year, this was the wrap up. The next episode will be our Christmas special together with Paul. We will reflect back on the year and how it's gone, or this season especially, and how it's gone so far, and maybe even have a cold beverage or two as we record it, as is tradition. But Janne, before we close, where can people subscribe to the newsletter where we picked up the stories from, and how can they be in touch?
So yeah, HelsinkiFintech.fi. There's where you can find the newsletter, the monthly reports, and also the annual report we were talking about. And then of course LinkedIn is a good channel to follow us for regular, almost daily updates.
Fantastic. So do subscribe to the newsletter so you will get all these headlines that we talked about and much more. It's a good way to keep up to speed with the Nordic fintech space in general. So with that being said, I'm off to the airport for another trip for this week. But beyond that, we have the usual ask for you, our dear listeners. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, comment, leave a review. Tell a friend, and especially subscribe on YouTube. Again, all of these things help us to reach more people, to talk about all the fun stuff happening in not only the Nordic fintechs, but also our fantastic guests as fintechs experts that we have every other episode on this podcast. So with that being said, have a nice continuation of the day wherever you are. And this has been Fintech Daydreaming.
This is Fintech Daydreaming.